So let's talk the basics of Hinduism for the recovering Catholic. Well, hello, my friends, and welcome back. This is a video to show the recovering Catholic another spiritual path so that you can come to understand it, so you can start to find. My goal eventually with these videos is to show you multiple spiritual paths and then at the end come back to the universal truths found in all of them so that you can see that God is too big to be encompassed by any one religion or school of thought. It literally is about coming back to that oneness with God. And there's no need for any of these religions in our lives. But, spirituality is a personal journey. If you choose one, that's great. For me personally, I find great strength in all of them. And so I don't consider myself a religious person in that way. I consider myself a person who is finding my own divinity within all of them. So this one that we're talking about today is Hinduism. And Hinduism is a fascinating school of thought and religion because there's a lot of misconceptions about Hinduism that need to be addressed. First of all, there's several different sects of Hinduism, just like in Christianity, you have Protestants and Catholics and so on, Baptists. In Hinduism, there's multiple versions of Hinduism as well. But some of the basic principles of Hinduism come down to 5 principles and 10 disciplines. And the one thing that I want to address before I get into the 5 principles and the 10 disciplines is the concept of God. Because many people see all of the different gods of Hinduism, Ganesh, Lakshmi, Shiva, and they go, well, they have so many gods. They don't have so many gods. They have one God. And the individual entities that you hear them talk about are the aspects of the one God. So if you're wanting abundance, you might go to Lakshmi or Ganesh. That would be the aspect of God of wealth and abundance, right? So that's where you would go. So it's not that they have more than one God. It's they have one God, but the God is so big that the aspects of God are where you, if that's what you're focused on in life, that's what you go to. So I wanted to bring that up first because that's important. Because people think there are many gods in that belief system, but there is only the one, and within that one, there are aspects of that one. But let's talk about these 5 principles of Hinduism. And the first one is that God exists at all. That God exists. I see, and I'm going to read this over here. According to the Hindu religion, there are only one absolute divine and singular force that joins all facets of existence together, known as the absolute Om, sometimes spelled A-U-M, Om, right? The divine is the Lord of all creation, and the universal sound is heard within every living being. There are several divine manifestations of Om, including Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, or better known as Shiva. So you're looking at there's only one, and within this there are these individual aspects. That oneness of God is found pretty much everywhere except for in Christianity. It's found in so many other religions that it's kind of sad that people have closed themselves off to that oneness of God, that really personal relationship with God. And so it's a very interesting aspect. The second thing is that all human beings are divine. That's one of the beliefs in Hinduism. All human beings are divine. And I'll read what it says now. Ethical and moral behavior is considered the most prized pursuit of human life. Let me read that again. Ethical and moral behavior is considered the most prized pursuit of human life. The soul of an individual, Jivatma, is already part of the divine soul. In other words, you are already part of God. You're already divine. You're already a piece of God. It's exactly what I talk about when I talk about the concept of being one with God and the oneness of God. That you're already a part of the divine soul, the Paramatma, although it remains in a dormant and diluted condition. Being in the physical means you to feel separate from it, which is exactly what they're saying here. So in this physical world, you feel separate. Don't feel your divinity. And it's a matter of coming back to your divinity. What Jeshua did was he discovered his divinity and was showing us our divinity, showing us what the Hindus would talk about that. It is the sacred mission of all humans to awaken their soul and make it realize its true divine nature. So, what did I just say? Jeshua was showing us our divinity, and it is the sacred mission of all humans to awaken their soul and make it realize its true divine nature. That's what Jeshua was talking about. The Father and I are one. Greater works than I have done you will do. You are the children of God. You could ask mountains to move, it'll move. Nothing's impossible for you. He kept telling us we were divine. And what the Hinduism does, Hinduism shows us very clearly that all humans are divine and God exists and we're one with God. So it comes back to that very experience. The third of the 5 principles is unity of existence. And I'm going to just read this and then I'll expound on it. The seekers aim to be at oneness with God, not as separate individuals, oneness of self, but rather a closer connection to at oneness with God. In other words, come back to your oneness with God. Well, this is what Jeshua talked about. It's what I talk about on a regular basis. Your oneness with God, your awareness of your divinity. You're part of that expression. You are the Sit Sat Ki, the individual sparks of consciousness within the one God. And so God exists, that every human is divine, and the whole process is to become aware of that divinity. The next is religious harmony, which is one that is lost on Christianity. The most basic natural law is to remain in harmony with all of its fellow creatures in universal knowledge. So, in other words, all religions are to be in balance, to accept one another. And when you look at the concept of religious harmony, there are religions in the world that are anti other religions. The most offending one is Christianity. And the reason that is because Christianity has said you have to accept Jesus as the Savior because he is the only Son of God. And so all other religions are wrong. And so that has created all of the struggles of trying to persuade people to their faith and trying to get them to come to Jesus. And in reality, Hinduism is a beautiful religion, and it talks about accepting the other religions as they are. One of my favorite quotes from Gandhi, he says, "I love your Jesus, I don't like your Christians." And to me, that makes perfect sense because the Christians are the judgmental. Jeshua wasn't judgmental. Jeshua was a loving, caring guy. And much of what he taught is found right here in front of you. Right? He spoke in the Bible. He spoke to everybody. He didn't care if they're Roman. He didn't, which were pagans. He didn't care if they were Samaritan. He didn't care what any of them believed. He spoke to everybody equally, and that is a huge lesson. Religious harmony. I traveled through Muslim countries. I treat everybody with respect. I don't care who they are, what the religion is. I treat everybody with respect. What happened? I was treated beautifully everywhere I went. And that is really the key, is coming to that space of just accepting everybody as divine, no matter what spiritual journey they're on. But if you're judging them for your journey and saying your journey has to be right, then I would question that. And number 5 of the principles is knowledge of the 3 Gs. The 3 Gs are the Ganges, the sacred river in India, where cleansing of sins occurs. So you go to the Ganges to clean your sins. Now, this comes obviously from an ancient time where they chose that river, that specific river, to be the holy river. And the Ganges, you go and you wash yourself in the Ganges, right? So that is an ancient belief that the Ganges River is the sacred river. The Gita, the sacred script of the Bhagavad Gita, right? And so it talks about the Bhagavad Gita right here. Talks about The Bhagavad Gita being a sacred script, just like the Christians would call the Bible a sacred script. And the last is the Gayatri, which is the revered sacred mantra found in the Rig Veda, also a poem intoned in the same specific meter. So that these are the dogmatic three, right? These are the first four have nothing to do with dogma, but the number 5 is all about the dogma of the religion. It's about that is sacred, and you have to do these special intonements. That's the dogmatic ceremonies of the Hindu religion. Now, when we get into the 10 disciplines, it comes to be something unique. Now, I want to make sure that I read this clearly. The 10 disciplines in Hinduism include 5 political goals called yamas or great vows, and 5 personal goals called niyamas. The 5 great vows, yamas, are shared by many Indian philosophies. The yamas are political goals in that they are broad-based social and universal virtues in the form of moral constraints and social obligations. The first of which is satya, truth, the principle that equates God with soul. It is the mainstay of basic moral law of Hinduism. People are rooted in satya, the greatest truth, the unity of all life. One should be truthful, not act fraudulently, be dishonest, or a liar in life. Further, a true person does not regret or brood over losses caused by speaking truth. Speak your truth. Be who you are. And the people who are not going to like you are going to go away. The people who resonate with you are going to hang around. And that, I don't know who said it, but there was a famous quote, those that mind don't matter and those that matter don't mind, right? It comes down to be you to your fullest and honest truth and don't hold back. This is what I live on my channel. You've probably heard me say multiple times that I'm only speaking my truth. People have unsubscribed from my channel because my truth didn't match their truth. I'm okay with that. I have to be okay with that because I'm only speaking my truth. And if my truth offends you, that's not my problem, that's yours. That's your issue. I'm not going to take your issue into my experience because I am staying truthful to who I am, not being dishonest about my beliefs. Number 2, ahimsa, which is non-violence. Ahimsa is a positive and dynamic force that means benevolence or love or goodwill or tolerance or all of the above to all living creatures, including the objects of knowledge and various perspectives. So it really comes down to you treat the world in a loving way, no matter what they believe, no matter what they think. It talks about complete equality and non-violence, not being angry with, not being physical with, anything that's contrary to your truth. It's not important enough for you to actually become violent in any form. And violence comes in many forms. There's emotional violence, there's verbal violence, there's physical violence, there's many different sexual violence, there's many different kinds of violence. This is saying non-violence, no violence at all. Don't fall into the pattern of slandering people because they don't believe you, using language in a way that is meant to shock people. Your violence becomes the mirror to your inability to actually hold true to your own truth. And that's really one of the most beautiful things about this. The next one, brahmacharya, celibacy or non-adultery. Now this is definitely a dogmatic sort of belief. Brahmacharya is one of the 4 great ashrams of Hinduism. The beginning student is to spend the first 25 years of one's life practicing abstinence from the sensual pleasures of life and instead concentrate on selfless work and study to prepare for the life beyond. Brahmacharya means stringent respect of personal boundaries and the preservation of vital force, abstinence from wine, sexual congress, meat eating, consumption of tobacco, drugs, and narcotics. The student instead applies the mind to studies, avoids things that ignite passions, and practice silence. So this is where they start laying in their dogmatic rules that you have to follow. And being someone who grew up in a beach resort, those early years, 20 to 25, were a lot of fun. And so I would not have made a good Hindu by this standard. But I don't think that the rules are something we hold on to in life. For me, the rules are the dogmatic things that we have to let go of to become enlightened. We have to let go of all of the rules and come back to just being loving, just being in the oneness of God. But this is their belief, and it's important to understand that in Hinduism, this is part of the belief. Let me read this very quickly again. The beginning student is to spend the first 25 years of one life practicing abstinence from the sensual pleasures of life and instead concentrate on selfless work and study to prepare for the life beyond. So it really comes down to you must be a devout student of the religion at least until you're 25 before you start even going into the other aspects of physical pleasure or pleasure of pleasurable life, which is interesting because that means your childhood can't be that pleasurable, right? Sensual pleasure, sometimes food is a sensual pleasure in my mind. Now let me jump over to the next one. Asteya, no desire to steal. Thou shalt not steal, right? Refers not just to the theft of objects, but to refrain from exploitation. Do not deprive others of what is theirs, whether it things, rights, or perspectives. An upright person earns his or her own way by dint of hard work, honesty, and fair means. So it really comes down to saying you're going to work hard, you're going to be good, and you don't steal. You don't take anybody else's stuff. You build your own stuff. You create your own stuff. Number 5 is aparigraha, which is non-possessiveness. Warns the student to live simply. Keep only those material things that are required to sustain the demands of daily life. This is fascinating because this is one of the things that I'm going through right now. I'm literally purging my house of everything that I don't use. Things that make no sense to me. I've got all these books over here that I've read, and there are some that I will keep just for reference. But I have so many that I'm just going to give away. I'm just going to donate them to a library or someplace where they can use them. Because when it comes down to your own physical world, there's a concept that if your world is cluttered, then you're cluttered in the mind. And I find that when I have so much stuff in my house, I have a much harder time thinking. When I have very little, I can be very much focused more on myself and my own personal journey at that time. So the concept of living simply to me is very attractive, and so that's kind of where I am in my life right now. Now let's move on to the 5 niyamas. The 5 niyamas provide the Hindu practitioner with rules to develop the personal discipline essential to follow the spiritual path. Shaucha, or shuddhata, cleanliness, refers to the internal and external purification of both body and mind. So you're keeping your mind clear and free of fears and doubts and anxieties and negative thoughts. And you'll find that all those negative thoughts are based in fears anyway. But you're keeping not only your internal self, but your external experience as well. You're keeping your house clean. You're keeping your environment clean. You're keeping everything around you in a clean state, because that is a part of the Hindu faith, is to be in cleanliness. Santosh is the second. Contentment is the conscious reduction of desires, the limiting of attainments and possessions, narrowing down to the scope of one's desire. So in other words, get rid of all the the knickknacks and the tchotchkes around you, and just come to the space of realizing that right here, right now, I could be content. I don't need anything else. And when you only come down to the things that you need, or that support the things that you are doing in this moment, it makes your life so much more focused. It also makes you much more productive, because now you're very focused. My friend Dan, famous motivational speaker, Very, very, very successful. I asked him one day, when did he become so successful? He says, when I stopped doing everything else. When I took away all the things that weren't in alignment with what I was doing, what I was creating. When I took those things away, I became successful. And that's what they're saying here is get very content with what you have and stay focused. Keep the things you have focused on what it is you're doing as opposed to having multiple paths at once. So find the one and do it. And here's another thing. If you start down a path and it doesn't work out for you, you can change your path at any time. I've heard this multiple times. The path is formed where you place your foot. The path is formed behind you. You are forging your own path. And so it comes down to the idea of, in your own personal contentment, choose a path. If the path doesn't work out for you, there is not another path. It's you choose to turn it to something else. Swadhyaya, reading of scriptures, refers not to just the reading of scriptures, but the use of them to create a neutral, unbiased, pure mind ready to conduct the self-introspection required to create a balance sheet of one's omissions and commissions, overt and covert deeds, successes and failures. So once again, this goes back to the idea of coming back to that purity, that clearness, that contentment, that direction. It literally is tying into and using the scriptures themselves as a pathway to stay on track. And you read the scriptures because they're telling you to stay on track, basically. Tapas, or tapa, austerity, perseverance, and penance, is the performance of physical and mental discipline throughout a life of asceticism. Ascetic practices include observing silence for long periods of time, begging for food, remaining awake at night, sleeping on the ground, being isolated in the forest, standing for a prolonged time, practicing chastity. The practice generates heat, a natural power built into the structure of reality, the essential link between the structure of reality and the force behind creation. These are actually the dogmatic rules for atonement. Basically, when you have fallen away from the 10 disciplines or the 5 principles, these are the things you do for atonement. You stay up all night, you stand, you do all these things to make atonement for it. And austerity, perseverance, and penance. So you are, I am doing this. You push your way through. And then when you fall away, you do a penance. So that is the dogmatic principles and cause and effect that you are to instill into your belief as a Hindu. Ishwar Pradhan, regular prayers, requires the student to surrender to the will of God, perform every act in selfless, dispassionate, natural way, accept the good and bad results, and leave the result of one's deeds, one's karma, to God. So it's saying, be a good person, live a good person, and perform every act selflessly without being upset, or just do the work dispassionately in a natural way and accept the good or bad results. If you don't accept the good or bad results, if you get a bad result and you get mad, that's not accepting. That's arguing. That's putting more negativity into the world. And what they're saying here is do your best. Do your absolute best. Don't get infected with the concept of being attached to outcome, and leave the result to your best, to God. Do your best, and whatever happens, happens. Basically, is what this is saying. So you're seeing a couple things in Hinduism. For the most part, they don't have a lot of dogma, right? They have a lot of ritual. They have a lot of idolatry. They have a lot of that kind of thing. But when you come back to the 5 principles, God exists. All human beings are divine. There's a unity of existence and religious harmony, and then of course the 3 Gs. So the 3 Gs were the Ganges, the Gita, and the Gatraya, the sacred mantra, right? So the number 5 is really the beginning of dogma. But before that, God exists, all humans are divine, and there's a unity of existence and with religious harmony. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful religion, right? And then, as with all religions, they add their own structure, which is their dogmas, their rituals, their ceremonies. But the basic principles of Hinduism are found in multiple religions. You know, we are one with God, we are divine, and we're all one with each other, right? That's one of the core elements of most religions. And so in Hinduism, it has it very clearly as their 5 principles. The disciplines are what we use to basically administer those five rules. So when it comes down to Hinduism, to me, I find it to be an absolutely stunningly beautiful religion. When I traveled through India, I found beautiful, beautiful people, and I saw them living their faith. I saw their acceptance of me. I mean, I was blown away when people were showing up to meet me. It was amazing. It was an amazing experience. But it comes down to you understanding your own divinity, your own oneness with God, and that's what Hinduism teaches, is that exact concept. And Buddhism teaches the same thing. Next week, we're going to talk about Islam, because Islam is something that I think we need to discuss in a big way, because Christians have demonized that religion, and there are beautiful things in that religion that we can talk about. Muhammad said, "He who knows not kindness has no faith," and so we'll talk about Islam next week. You guys have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon. See ya. Bye.